This video is brought to you by Midway USA. Support the channel by choosing Midway for your shooting and outdoor supplies.
You know this is about to suck for you, right?
Send it.
Oh,
It is not range talk without the brass bukkake. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are here to talk about the furious competition between the SCAR and the ACR. Or is it, Josh?
is serious competition or an ACR at all?
Is this an ACR? They say on the internet land that this is the ACR we have at home. Oh, sorry. The Holosun has died.
But it has solar, so.
It has solar. It is in the 21st century China.
Whew,
So
snazzy.
I remember seeing this thing years ago. Here, put a few shots downrange.
Wow. This
How's-
is actually gassed
First
really
impression.
nice.
First impression.
Gassing, recoil impulse, really nice.
How does it compare to the SCAR?
It doesn't feel that far away from, like, the SCAR is probably, the Mark 16,
Yeah.
known for extremely low recoil impulse, very controllable, very smooth shooting. This, even with the can-on, granted flow through can, but even with the can-on, feels like quite controllable. The immediate thing that I don't like that's taking away from the recoil control and shooting experience is
But Josh, it's same. It's an ACR stock, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, this is, of course, not the ACR. Today we are looking at the PSA, the Palmetto State Armory, the JAKL. You can see this angry dog right here. That is a JAKL. A little angry African dog, except this is spelled JAKL, a slightly dyslexic version of the actual African JAKL. But the JAKL is known to be a ferocious little thing, which this is foldable to become a ferocious little thing. And on the internet land, this is kind of nowadays affectionately been known as the ACR we have at home, because obviously the big thing that gives it away is the ACR stock, right?
right.
The ACR also had a charging handle, kind of like the HK position right here, non-reciprocating charging handle on the left side. And because it's a little farther forward and not like the FN SCAR being so far back, it plays a little better with optics. Also being non-reciprocating.
Oh, I see what you mean. So
Yeah.
if you turn it towards the camera, the charging element stops at the front of the magwell, whereas the charging element here
Yep.
is basically all the way to the back of the magwell. So when you go to run the charging handle like this to charge the gun, if you have it in the left-hand configuration and you have any sort of an optic that has like bolts or knobs, like these bolts and knobs sticking out the left side of the gun.
You ask, why does Henry run all the bolts and knobs on the right side instead of the left? My friend, that is experience.
So if you do have a scope mount that has like traditional bolt nubs on the sides, and you go to run this on the SCAR platform, you can indeed enjoy the pain.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, because like today I want to focus our attention on the first shots video that we have right here on the PSA JAKL. Years ago, 2019 or 2020, that we saw PSA
2020 at SHOT.
at the SHOT Show booth. They kind of like hushed us into quiet corners and opened
or so we thought, but
Yeah.
then we just found out later they did it to everybody.
open up a trench coat, and there was this little thing, and it looked like what's that movie with William Dafoe and that ERDL woodland pattern, and he's got that little like kitty cat AR. That's to me,
clear and present danger.
yes,
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I was like, are you guys? No, that's not it. What is that? It was the first iteration of the JAKL, and that was still the non-firing version of it. But the idea that they had was a piston-driven system with a buffer to bufferless stock.
Right.
So foldable. And everyone was really excited because they were like, here, shoot a couple more rounds. I want you to get more shooting impressions on it. And a lot of people back then were thinking, because we didn't have, outside of the Scar and the Bren, it's not like we were looking at a lot of different kind of rifles that had a foldable back end to where you could really choke it down, right? And so everyone was really excited that PSA was making something that was kind of like an ACR, or at the very least a short version of the ACR, like an SBR ACR that everyone was looking at.
Right.
But for me, when I was looking at it, especially later on learning that this is indeed not a short stroke gas piston like the FN Scar, it is actually a long stroke gas piston system.
Hey, are you guys enjoying hanging out on range with us? Well, maybe you'd like to join the Patreon and hop into the private Discord. We'll see you guys there. Let's get back to it.
So it's got the element of a Kalashnikov mixed with the bolt head of an AR-15. So the idea then is that with long stroke systems, in my opinion, long stroke systems are a little easier to gas gently, which is why, like, when you gas check an AK, the AK feels so unique. It feels like this long, gentle push rather than this pop. And that pop, usually from the short stroke pistons, like the 416s,
great example.
the G36s.
Even this gun, when you're in certain configurations.
Right. And that pop comes from that short stroke tap it, because it's a really violent tap that moves the entire system backwards, right? Now, I don't know if anyone out there has really talked about this, but when people were like, oh, this is revolutionary to have a long stroke with an AR bolt in it. My friends.
Oh no.
Let me introduce to you the Gangnam AR.
Whoop 'em. Whoop 'em.
The K2 indeed was the OG from the, developed in the late 70s, really rolled out in the 80s, and we've done a full video on it. One of our most popular videos in South Korea.
Thank
Still
you,
is.
South Korea.
And it uses an AK's long stroke system merged with an AR's bulk carrier group. And the reason for that is because the Koreans, let me put this on shred mode to see if it actually cycles. The reason for that was because, remember that back then the Koreans faced licensing problems with the M16s. And so they had a license to make the M16s, but they could only make it for domestic consumption, and they had to pay a royalty to Colt. And the Koreans are the Koreans are very enterprising in a way that they know how to make these things, obviously. They know how to make the M16A1s. They have Korean marked M16A1s. So they wanted to make something that was in a domestic form that could challenge the M16A1 for domestic use. And the K2 was born. The interesting thing about the K2 is that it uses all domestic AR-15 machinery to make. So the bolt, the barrel, the trunnion, or not trunnion, excuse me, AK talk there. The barrel extension, all of that can be manufactured with AR-15 manufacturing components to make this particular thing. It's easy to make a gas piston. The difficult thing comes down to the bolt and the barrel extension. Well, guess what PSA has? PSA has a production of AR-15s. So they have the basic elements of making AR-15 bolts. And while it's easy to make a piston system, the bolts and bolt carrier, that side is a little bit more challenging in making sure the material and everything is right. But having the blueprints to make quality AR-15s, and yes, I said PSA can make quality AR-15s, just comes down to whether that quality is controlled in-house or by the end user. Those things, the machine work is still fine. So they're able to basically then turn something like this out that is drastically different from the AR-15. Indeed, also has a folding rear stock uses a long stroke gas piston system, much like the K2. Now, the real question is, I haven't shot it at 100 yards on paper, so I don't know if the accuracy rivals the M16, but the K2's accuracy, it's not, I have not been able to shoot it on par with the M16, but it certainly is more precise than an AK, in my opinion. So,
from what I've seen too, and other people doing, like obviously this is a first shots video,
yeah.
So these are like first shots on the gun, aside from zeroing. And what I have seen from other people though, is that they are shooting like pretty good groups with these.
You would imagine so, because essentially, look inside, the barrel extension should just be like an AR barrel extension.
Yep, looks like it.
So, I mean, if you have the same lockup system, why would it not have a similar output? But the shooting characteristics, let me see. I put it on shred mode. Let me see if it's. That's on the last leg. Yeah, definitely. Like on the small gas port, this thing feels really nice. I know it's been a hot minute since you shot that one. It's interesting. You could feel the recoil feels like an AK on that thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting feeling gun. What I can tell you is that for sure, this is a lot lighter than that gun, but in these two things side by side, like that gas is way nicer.
Yeah, oh for sure, for sure. That's a military 4-position gas system too.
Yes.
Bottom line is, it's interesting because this gas is better, but I could feel the similarities between the two gassing
the impulse
systems.
is definitely similar.
Like when you compare that to, let's say, an MCX, Spear LT, excuse me. Do people care about Spear LT or MCX?
I don't know. I don't think so. Technically, it is an MCX, right?
So, short stroke gas piston, dual recoil springs. Tell me how you think that feels versus the other one. And you've already like outfitted it to gas and shoot a little smoother than the stock configuration.
This is outfitted really nice.
Okay. But do you feel a difference between the gassing? I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I feel the movement more, like I feel more of the movement. Like I can perceive the impulse coming back and forward.
It's like a Kalashnikov.
More so.
Or you can feel that crack.
This is a little bit punchier, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a little bit more like. Yeah, this is definitely like a punchier, snappier impulse, even if overall this is configured in such a way that makes it really shootable at the moment. Try a rip on paper.
This thing?
Yeah, just hold.
Dude, this stock feels like it's made of rubber. What?
I know.
Is
Hold
this?
hold upper A zone, and then we'll talk about the stock. Hold upper, like top edge of the A zone.
Okay, ready?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of those rounds are all.
I mean,
dead
it's
center edge.
basically, I'm just seeing it bounce between center upper A zone to the right, top right corner.
Yeah, that's about 10, 12 yards.
Yeah. So, hot. Do I have to? Can I shoot a couple with the ACX?
Sure.
MCX? ACX. Neither ACR nor MCX. Older. Dude, this gasses really nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You gas this to where there's like no really.
Yeah, between the brake and everything going on, it feels really good. Okay, so. I mean, don't get it mistaken. This shoots really well too. Now let's talk about the stock.
The stock,
a little
okay.
bit. I referenced the stock a minute ago when we first started. So we have this is an actual ACR stock, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4 open. 1, 2, 3, 4 open, right?
Yeah.
Like that is not amazing that we can bend it like this, and I feel like I could probably snap it. And if we try to do it with this, no such luck. Also, not just this component being loose, but it does feel like this whole contraption is just far, far looser than the actual OG one.
It feels like it's not a design issue, it's a material selection issue.
It feels like it's just a little bit jello-y. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen T-Rex had the same complaint.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Brandon over at T-Rex had the same complaint with the stock.
So
it's not, I wouldn't, it takes a lot for me to say a stock is unusable. I don't think it's unusable.
Yeah.
I may not have the same level of confidence in it.
Well, what I can tell you is that if I were like, this is as the gun comes, right? With the exception of the slate black kit and the suppressor.
Yep.
Right? Everything else is still stock.
Yep.
Grab the MCX really quick. When I got my MCX here, the LT, how many changes did I make? Two major functional changes. I changed the muzzle device, and I changed the entire stock configuration because I thought the stock configuration was insufficient. It was not a good stock configuration.
And one of these equals two of those.
Right, okay. Yeah, not a commentary on price at all, but within the respect of, you can get a system and still feel like you want to make adjustments to it to improve how it shoots for you. Even if the gun is a very expensive, $2,500+ gun, I still took it and modified it the way that I wanted, and that was a stock configuration change. In this instance, with this gun, the front end of this feels really solid. The shooting, the impulse, all of it feels really good. What I don't love is when I'm pulling this into my, you can probably see this.
Yeah, it's bending downwards. It's bending down.
And that's minor amounts of rearward pressure. So when I'm pulling the gun into myself to help control recoil and driving that shoulder forward because I'm trying to isolate and control the recoil, I don't love the feeling that I'm getting out of that. So what I would tend to do in this instance is swap out to a Picatinny rear, which I believe that they offer, right?
Yep.
The Picatinny rear, and I would put a different stock configuration on it, whether it's something like the SIG knuckle.
So you're saying that you could have a double folding stock?
I mean, that would be, for me, that would be a change that I would make before I would do anything serious with this and take it out to shoot it and really put it through its paces and try to shoot it.
I mean, obviously we don't know the durability of it. The other thing, I'm glad you were charging it with the hammer down, and this is being nitpicky. It feels more difficult to charge than other 5.56 rifles. Not including
it's
roller
almost
delay.
it's when there's a mag in.
I see. Okay.
Because this actually feels fine. It's a little bit on the sluggish side or a little bit stiff, but when the mag is in, I think the round interacting with the bolt carrier seems to make it a little bit stiff when I'm cycling it back. Now again, how many rounds through this, Henry? However many this was.
Yes.
So I would venture to guess that over time, some of this will loosen up and probably break in. But again, that just makes me nervous about it.
But look at what we're doing right here, though. We're looking at this with a solid A-zone recoil pattern. You could see the recoil patterns going bottom left to top right, but all in the A-zone.
Well, yeah, I also mag dumped some other crap into it, yeah.
Okay, yes, but if
generally
this was
it's right
really,
on top.
If this was really ripping off, then you wouldn't see that actual pattern still exist. Can you just rip it? One thing I actually noticed with the P-mags, go ahead. I like the ejection pattern on this because it doesn't come into my location where I'm standing.
I mean, this is obviously, guys, you can see this is very shootable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 30 yards down there. This is very shootable. C-zone on the left and kind of like an A-zone with a little head box on the right. So.
Right. So one thing that I had seen, and this is from Aaron over at Admin, his had issues with the Torx screws backing out of the trunnion. So I would say if you were to buy one of these, definitely go ahead and check.
Well, why don't you talk about that a little more? Because I was going to say, if there was a thing, careful, very, not loaded, but very hot.
Yes.
One of the things that you talk to me about routinely is how you dislike a bunch of Torx and drivers basically holding the gun together.
Yeah, I mean it's from the design element, it's a weak point. It's a weak link to design.
potential area for failure, right?
Right. Let's look at this design from the 80s. Where do you see the fasteners?
Right.
Right here on the handguard.
Yeah.
Which is not critical to the firearms operation.
And again, let's not like get it mistaken. It's not as if we're trying to like pick on just the JAKL.
Yeah.
Like when you look at the SCAR, what do you see all over it? Fasteners. What issues have we had with the SCARs in the past?
The SCARs, we specifically with the SCAR Heavy, we've had it back the barrel.
This one.
Those two, the barrel nut had the fasteners back out, and then we lost 0 on it.
And that was with red Loctite, with torque to spec, confirmed.
And that's an FN SCAR. So
what about this one? Fastener,
I think the fasteners are up front, right?
It's all in here, but it's all what issues have we demonstrated, and do people talk about routinely on this with the handguard flex?
The bendy boy!
Right? So what does it come down to? In many ways, we believe it's probably the fastener mechanisms and how they interface. So, again, it's something that you kind of deal with on a lot of modern setups, but
it could be mitigated with maintenance. I mean, let's not take away from any of this. Like the Koreans being able to make this from M16 tooling they had on hand, that was impressive. That is impressive because this core design they still use, and like the M16 M4, the base design is largely unchanged. The K2 speaks volumes of the Korean manufacturing sector. Having the AR-15 tooling to make the M16A1 and turning out the K2 speaks volumes of the Koreans. Similar to that, PSA having tooling and experience making AR-15s and improving upon that design to generate something that is a uniquely PSA design.
Yeah, and by a manufacturer that's operating like purely in the civilian sector.
Yes, yeah. So
cool.
Remember, these guys 10 years ago, they were making budget kits.
Yeah.
Like this was the new age Delton. You remember Delton back in the day?
Yeah.
They were making that type of stuff, and for them to then in 2020 come out with this thing, and to be honest, like you and I were kind of like, this is really cool. I don't know if that's actually going to come to market.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep my eye out.
Right.
So here we are.
What's ultimately really interesting about this is, yes, there are options that are like not AR-15s, not AKs out there that are in a more manageable price bucket. The Bren comes to mind as a primary one. But when you look at the majority of these other ones that we would put on the table and say, yeah, like these play in these spaces, these are made by, they're ground up designs, but they're ground up designs
manufacturers,
major military players, right?
Yep.
And so and they're charging huge premiums for the price.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see one of these come to market that is at a manageable price point, barrier for entry relatively low in comparison, and again, a ground up design that is, well, frankly, something that shoots clearly very well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be very interested to see how this continues to perform as we move forward. If it has the durability within it and the accuracy standards, which I'm feeling like that's going to be that's going to be good to go.
So agreed.
As we go forward.
The biggest thing that I find interesting on this is, so we talked about extruded aluminum receivers are actually easier to manufacture than pounding a block of alloy together and making this, right? And yet these things are charging 4 times more than an AR-15 on that manufacturing method.
$2,500 to $3,500. Yeah.
Right. We know the cost is not the same as manufacturing an AR-15, and yet the demand for it at that price point, the price point that comes from the demand generates a price point that is easily 3 or 4 times the AR-15. This is quite a market disruptor for people who want to play in that next level, next generation carbine space with extruded aluminum receivers. I think that's interesting. And in the long term, I would like to see if players like this, if players like you were saying, the Bren 2 from CZ, other players like BNT's APC line, I would like to see if the increased players, the increased options that are in the field, that competition, if that competition would actually start depressing the price of this next generation carbine.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And so with that said, gang, we appreciate you hanging out for this episode of First Shots. Until next time, we'll see you on the range.
716 is Gillnet 6, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green, top copy, over.
296, this is 716.